Welcome to Driftwood Stories, where the wind remembers, the sky waits, and the old myths still breathe beneath the stars. Tonight we rise from stillness into thunder. We drift upward, beyond the valleys of the Titans, beyond the soft rivers and stone halls of the old world, to the edge of change. This is the story of Zeus, not yet king, not yet thunder-bearer, but a hidden child, cradled in a quiet cave, wrapped in prophecy and golden honey. Long before Olympus stood tall, the world was ruled by Titans, and among them one feared his children's rise, so much so that he swallowed each one whole. But time moves forward, and even the deepest silence cannot keep the future from waking. This is the tale of a quiet rebellion, of family, courage, and the moment the sky cracked open to let something new be born. A story not of war, but of becoming. So let go now. Let your breath settle, like clouds before the rain. Let your eyes grow heavy, and your heart float free. The stars have gathered, the earth listens, the world is about to change, and it begins with a whisper. Chapter 1. A Quiet Prophecy. The reign of Cronus was golden, or so it seemed. The mountains stood tall and unshaken. The rivers hummed their ancient songs. The sky was high and pale with peace. Mortals had not yet come, and the gods who would one day shape their world still slumbered in silence. Cronus ruled from on high, surrounded by the Titans, his brothers and sisters, born of Gaia and Uranus. Manna. He had thrown with his own hands, casting down the sky itself, and claimed the world as his own. At his side was Rhea, radiant and wise, the Titaness of flow and time, of cycles and turning seasons. Her gaze was soft yet steady, and she bore his children with quiet dignity. But even in stillness, the wind can carry warnings. One night, as the stars wheeled slowly above, Gaia, the great Earth Mother, stirred in her roots. She whispered through stone and soil, sending her breath up through groves and caves, through the sighs of sleeping trees. And what she whispered was this: "One of your sons shall rise against you as you rose against your own father." The wheel turns, Cronus. The sky remembers, Cronus heard, and in hearing feared. For though he was strong, he knew the shape of fate. Had he not himself overthrown Uranus at Gaia's urging? Had he not wielded the sickle with trembling hands? He began to look upon each child not as joy, but as danger. And so, when Rhea bore her first, Hestia, goddess of the hearth, Cronus swallowed her whole. No thunder, no fire, just the deep silence of fear. One by one the children came, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and one by one they vanished down his throat, hidden within his immortal belly, swallowed like a secret the sky could not yet speak. Rhea wept, but she did not shout. The stars blinked, but they did not fall. The world held its breath, and somewhere in the deep old earth, something else began to stir. Chapter 2. Rhea's Hidden Son. Time passed like a slow breath. The world still spun. The stars still circled. Cronus still ruled, golden, silent, unchallenged. But beneath his quiet throne, Rhea's heart was breaking. She bore each child in love. and each time Cronus took them, not with cruelty, but with cold fear. Swallowed whole they lived, yet never saw the sky. Their light was locked within him, silent, waiting. Rhea wandered alone through groves and caves, her hands pressed to her belly, her voice singing lullabies that only the stones could hear. The world felt heavy. The flow of time itself began to strain, as if it too held back tears. And then came the sixth child, a boy, a flicker of something new. His presence was soft but strong, like thunder before it speaks. Rhea looked into his eyes and saw not war, but wonder. She could not give him up. So she went to Gaia, the earth who remembers. And Gaia, with her deep-rooted wisdom, whispered a plan beneath the soil. "Hide him," said the earth. "Let him grow among the roots and bees. Let the sky forget his name until it is time to rise." And so Rhea gave birth in secret, her breath hushed by the trees. The child's first cry was caught by the wind and carried into the rocks where no one could hear. She wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth, round and heavy, shaped like her sorrow, and handed it to Cronus. He swallowed it whole, and in that moment a lie saved the world. Meanwhile the child, Zeus, was carried far away, across the wine-dark sea to the green island of Crete. There, beneath the canopy of olive leaves and golden sky, a cave opened like a cradle. The nymphs received him with songs and honey. The goat Amalthea nursed him with warm milk. The Curetes, armed dancers, struck their shields and shouted, drowning out his infant cries so that Cronus would not hear. And Zeus, the hidden sun, grew, not in halls or palaces, but in wind and wildness, not with power, but with purpose. A storm was sleeping in the cave, and one day it would wake. Chapter 3. Raised by the wild and the wise. Far from the halls of Cronus, hidden in the green heart of Crete, the child grew, not in marble chambers nor golden cradles, but in the breath of caves and the rustle of leaves. The earth was his guardian, the sky his ceiling, and the old spirits of nature his quiet family. The cave of Dicte cradled him in cool stone and soft shadow. Light filtered down through moss and vines, catching in golden pools. The wind curled gently at his feet. He did not know his name would one day echo through mountains. He only knew the hum of bees, the warmth of milk, and the songs of the nymphs. Amalthea, the nurturing goat, fed him with milk rich as moonlight. Her coat was soft as spring clouds, her eyes deep and kind. From her horns drops of nectar fell, and where they landed, flowers bloomed in quiet devotion. The bees of the mountain brought honey sweet with wild thyme and sunlight, feeding him strength and golden dreams. Their wings whispered lullabies to the child as he slept, cradled in the stone's embrace. The Curetes, warrior spirits of rhythm and protection, stood guard outside the cave. Whenever he cried, they leapt and clashed their bronze shields, dancing and shouting in sacred patterns to drown the sound, so Cronus, high on his throne, would never hear. The earth herself watched over him. Gaia whispered stories into the soil. The stars blinked slowly above, keeping time with his growing breath. And Zeus, still small, still hidden, grew not just in body, but in being. He learned the silence of roots, the courage of bees, the strength that is born not of force, but of care. He did not yet know he was destined for thunder, but he knew the rhythm of the world, and in that quiet rhythm, a king was forming, haptophore, awakening the siblings. Years passed like leaves drifting downstream. Zeus, once a child wrapped in wind and milk, had grown tall and bright-eyed, his spirit calm, his strength quiet but vast. He knew now who he was. He knew who had been taken, and he knew what must be done. But he did not rush. He listened first. In the whisper of trees he heard Rhea's sorrow. In the breath of the earth he felt Gaia's waiting hope. And in the stillness between the stars he heard them, his siblings, dreaming in darkness, locked in the hollow of their father's belly. He could not free them by force. Cronus was immortal, vast and proud, ever watchful. But there was another way, one that flowed through thought, not might. He sought the counsel of Metis, Titaness of deep wisdom and cunning thought, who wandered the wild edges of the world, her voice as soft as twilight and sharp as frost. Metis listened to Zeus, and then she smiled, a quiet, knowing curve of the lips. To release what was swallowed, she said, "We must stir the belly, not the blade." From roots and herbs, from sea foam and wild honey, she brewed a potion, bitter, golden and ancient, a draught to churn the gut of even a Titan. Zeus approached Cronus, not with battle, but with hospitality. Disguised as a humble cupbearer, he offered the potion in a chalice shaped like a fallen star. Cronus drank, careless and unaware. Then the sky shuddered. A great cry rose from within the Titan's belly, and one by one the swallowed gods returned, not dead, but alive, preserved in silence, dazed, but burning with light. First Hestia, flickering with warmth, then Demeter, cloaked in golden grain, Hera, proud and glowing, Hades, silent and deep-eyed, and Poseidon like the sea before the storm. They stood beside Zeus, the brother they had never known. The air between them hummed. Recognition beyond memory. Their hands found each other. No need for words. They were whole, and though the sun had not yet risen, the dark had begun to lift. Chapter 5, Gathering the Storm. The sky no longer slept. Above the world, the winds shifted. Clouds thickened with thought. The stars turned their gaze downward. The earth, ancient and listening, held its breath. For the 6 children of Cronus now stood side by side. Zeus, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades and Poseidon, not as scattered sparks, but as a flame rekindled. Their reunion did not bring vengeance. It brought balance. Each bore a different gift, a different weight. Together, they formed a harmony the old world had never known. They climbed the high slopes of the sky to Mount Olympus, whose peaks rose above cloud and time. It was a mountain untouched by Titan feet, a place not yet claimed by any throne. And there, beneath a dawn that had never before broken, they made a vow, not to rule in fear, not to reign alone, but to shape a world where light and dark, order and wildness could live in rhythm. The earth stirred, the Titans heard. Cronus, now trembling with the echo of prophecy fulfilled, called upon his kin. The old powers answered, Atlas, broad as the horizon, Hyperion, blazing with ancient fire, Iapetus, sharp and silent. They came not out of loyalty, but out of pride, unwilling to yield to a younger sky. And so the storm gathered. Lightning curved along the edges of thought. Stone cracked beneath the tread of ancient feet. Titans raised their voices, and the clouds split like fruit. But amid the chaos, some chose stillness. Oceanus, the river at the edge of the world, did not stir. Tethys, his radiant companion, sang to calm the winds. Themis, goddess of law and order, watched with heavy eyes and said nothing. The battle would come, but it would not be all fire and ruin. There would be quiet acts of courage, small loyalties, whispers of fate rippling outward like drops upon still water. The storm had gathered, and in its centre stood Zeus, not roaring, not striking, but ready. Chapter 6, 10 Years of Thunder. The war that followed did not last a season. It lasted a decade, 10 years of rumbling skies and trembling earth, of fire and wind, of gods and titans caught in the slow turning of fate. But this is not the tale of clashing weapons. This is a story told in the quiet moments between thunder. Each side took its place. The Titans, vast and old, stood with Cronus, bound by the past, by pride, by the need to hold what had always been. The younger gods, the Olympians, stood with Zeus, not just because he was strongest, but because he believed in something greater than fear. They were bound not by blood alone, but by choice. At first, the Titans struck like mountains falling. Hyperion's fire scorched the sky. Atlas hurled whole peaks into the sea. Creus darkened the winds. Even Cronus, though aged, wielded the sickle of time with terrible grace. But the Olympians did not waver. Poseidon raised the oceans in towering walls. Hades called upon shadows and silence. Demeter made the earth shift beneath Titan feet. Hestia kept the fire of their hope alive. Hera moved with will unshaken, her voice like law. And Zeus learned the voice of storm. He did not begin with thunder. It had to be earned. But as the war wore on, the sky began to respond. The clouds thickened at his call. The air split open when he raised his hand, and from the storm came the lightning. Not rage, but purpose. A spark of change. He cast it like truth, not wrath, and the Titans began to falter. Some watched from the edges. Prometheus, son of Iapetus, saw the fire in Zeus's eyes and said nothing, yet leaned ever so slightly toward the light. Themis, the silent one, placed a hand upon the scales, and the balance began to shift. It was not one blow, one day, one moment. It was 10 long years of trial, trust, and turning tides. And in the final breath of the 10th year, the storm prepared to break. Chapter 7, The Fall and the Rise. The final day came not with fury, but with stillness. After 10 years of trembling earth and scorched skies, there was a hush, as if the world itself paused between one breath and the next. The Titans stood weary, their power worn thin like ancient stone. The Olympians stood steady, not untouched but unbroken. And in the centre of it all stood Zeus, no longer hidden, no longer rising, but risen, He did not roar. He did not rage. He lifted his hand, and the sky answered. With a flash that split the heavens, lightning carved through the last shadow of Cronus's reign. Not in cruelty, but in completion, a thread of fate tying past a future, loosening what had long been clenched. Cronus fell, not with a cry, but a sigh, as if at last he could rest. The sickle slipped from his grasp. His shadow withdrew from the world. The Titans did not die. They were not shattered or lost, but they were ended. Their time closed like a book set gently on the shelf of history. Some, like Atlas, were bound to hold the weight of their choices, the sky upon his shoulders, a burden that would echo in eternity. Others, like Oceanus and Themis, were spared, for they had chosen stillness and balance over wrath. Cronus and the others were cast into Tartarus, a deep chasm beneath the earth, sealed by the will of the new gods, not as punishment alone, but as preservation, a keeping of what had been, so that what would be might flourish. And so the Titans fell, and the Olympians rose, but not with crowns and fanfare, with reverence, with breath, with the quiet knowledge that the world they inherited had been shaped by silence and storm alike. The age of the Titans had ended, and in the space it left behind, Olympus opened its eyes. Chapter 8, Olympus in the morning light. Dawn came gently. For the first time since the world had cracked open and the sky had roared, there was quiet, not empty, but full. A silence rich with promise, the kind of stillness that follows the final note of a long, long song. High above the clouds, the peak of Mount Olympus gleamed with soft light. The storm had passed, the battle had ended, and the new gods, the children of Rhea and Cronus, stood in the morning glow. There were no trumpets, no declarations, just the wind, the stone, the stars blinking slower, as if sighing in relief. Zeus stood at the centre, his eyes not on thrones or glory, but on the horizon. His siblings stood beside him, Poseidon, deep as the sea, Hades, quiet as roots beneath the world, Hera, tall and watchful, Demeter, warm with earth's breath, Hestia, the gentle flame between them all. Together they made a choice, not to rule over, but to guide, not to be feared, but to bring balance. Sky, sea, and underworld. And Olympus, the mountain none had climbed before, became their home. Not just a place of power, but of presence. Below, the earth began to bloom again. The winds softened, the stars shifted in their ancient rhythm. Even the deep roots of Gaia stirred with contentment. The old world had not been destroyed, only transformed, and in its transformation a new age had begun, one of thunder and wisdom, flame and order, love and storm. And so the sky, once wounded, now stood whole, and as you close your eyes, drifting through the clouds above time, know that Olympus still watches, and in its light, sleep comes gently. The Titans have fallen, and a new world dreams beneath the morning light.